But I want to make sure that's clear. This joke is made right before Professor Markel is murdered, right?
The joke was made many times.
It was made right before Professor Markel was murdered. Yes or no?
Yes.
Let's talk about your brother's jokes now. You don't deny that he joked about hiring a hitman.
He did.
You don't deny that he repeated this joke.
He did.
And he made this joke right before a hitman murdered Professor Markel.
I don't know that to be true.
Okay. He made the joke right before, and I'll leave out the hitman part, Professor Markel was killed.
He made the joke the morning that I talked to him.
Can you think of one person in this world that would actually hire two people to go kill Professor Markel other than your family?
No.
Ms. Adelson, please address me and answer the question.
It calls for an unbelievable amount of speculation. I mean, I'm responsible for coming up with, that's the prosecutor's duty, to figure out who's responsible.
You just said a moment ago that you disagree that hitman killed Professor Markel. That's what you said, right? So my question to you is, if you're able to say, well, it wasn't hitman, then who? Tell this jury. Who on this planet would have wanted to kill Professor Markel?
I have no idea.
All right. Let's get into that a little bit. But I want to make sure that's clear. This joke is made right before Professor Markel is murdered, right?
The joke was made many times.
It was made right before Professor Markel was murdered. Yes or no?
Yes.
Who is going to believe a woman who called the victim a latex, who, within less than a year of the murder, before it was discovered that he was actually killed by hitmen, said at a podcast that he was likely killed at the hands of a professional killer? Who is going to believe that a woman who jokes about the hitman option, or often repeats her brother's joke about it, including on the very same day that her ex-husband was murdered by a hitman, that she had nothing to do with this murder? Let's talk about Wendy Adelson. The hitman joke is the main reason why Donna, Harvey, Charlie, and Wendy Adelson will easily be convicted. Well, two of them have already been convicted because of that joke. And two more could be convicted if they were charged. And the reason is because who jokes about murder? I mean, the bottom line is, if you're going to be making jokes about murder, about hiring a hitman, then you will lose all credibility with any juror. Now, of course, everybody says this was Charlie's joke. But repeating the joke to all these other people, just as senseless as making the joke. And then who's going to believe the coincidence that the joke was told so repeatedly on the day that a hitman killed Dan Markel? I mean, who's going to think that was a coincidence? It was told by Charlie to Wendy, supposedly, when they were on the phone discussing the TV that was the subject of the joke. The TV that was supposed to be repaired that morning, or at least looked at by Geek Squad guy. The joke was told by Wendy to the Geek Squad guy. Again, who would do that, right? I mean, this is a weird family. I get it. They do a lot of weird things. But those weird things will get you convicted. That's what happened so far with Charlie and Donna. So, yeah, Wendy told the joke, maybe even said that it was Charlie's joke. It doesn't matter, but she told the joke to the Geek Squad guy. I mean, she also has some disgusting jokes. The whole latex, referring to Dan Markel as a latex. Come on. Ridiculous. Yeah, you get convicted because of your mouth, because of the things you say. Because that's what this is, right? A case that has a lot of circumstantial evidence. It is a very well pre-planned murder. And the prosecutor has to put pieces together, and the pieces point towards the Adelsons. And whatever excuse they're going to come up with, especially if it's going to be based on, oh, all these other people heard our joke and did it themselves, nobody's going to believe that. Nobody. Not for Charlie, not for Donna, not for Harvey, and not for Wendy. That's the bottom line. So Wendy tells the joke to the guy from Geek Squad. And then, of course, we go to the interrogation room. And she mentions the joke to Detective Isom several times. Talks about that it was a joke, but that it did exist. Now, from what we know about this murder, we know that it was planned, right? So we know that Donna Adelson was the meddler, right? She was meddling in Wendy Adelson's life. She was being the director, in a sense, not only in finding Dan Markel for her to marry, but also in helping her develop the courage to leave Dan Markel for happiness and to move to South Florida so that Grandpa and Grandma can be close to those grand boys that they all love so much, right? They do love them so much. They want to be with them all the time. And as Georgia Kappelman said, Dan Markel, who looked excellent on paper at first, and Wendy was pushed maybe into marrying the perfect guy, Markel, well, they didn't like him anymore after they had those kids and after he started to show that he actually had a backbone and that he actually had ideas about how to raise those boys that were different than what Donna and Wendy, especially Donna, of course, who was the controller of everybody, of what she wanted. So yes, Donna helped her daughter and, in a sense, helped design the whole divorce in a very, very nasty way to start it like that, right? To start it when Dan Markel is out on a trip, about to give the speech at a presentation, at a conference, and then he gets the phone call and he's informed, yes, I want a divorce. Yes, I took the kids. Of course, Dan Markel drops everything. It's like, hey, forget you guys here at the conference. My life is falling apart. My kids are being taken away. I'm going to go back to Tallahassee. I don't believe that he gave that presentation. I wonder, I never got any verification one way or the other, but my understanding is that he immediately left. Don't know. I would love to know the truth of that. Did he actually go ahead and give that presentation without any full thoughtfulness about what he was saying? Because obviously he would have been super worried and concerned and desperate to go back home and deal with the situation. Donna Adelson was the one who was designing how everything was moving along. She definitely was a meddler and got herself deeply involved in the litigation, in the divorce and post-divorce litigation, and even in writing some of the papers. But we know that Wendy had an involvement in deciding or, in approving or disapproving whatever Mom was suggesting, right? She could have said no to dropping the bomb like that on Dan Markel.
When he was about little kids and motorcycles. Parents, I guess, who don't care if their children die in accidents on the road. Anyway.
So Wendy Adelson didn't have to accept all the suggestions from her mom. Did not. Didn't have to start the divorce in a nasty way and didn't have to accept anything else that her mom kept suggesting, including all the crazy suggestions that Donna sent to Wendy by email that she rejected eventually, right? So Wendy did have a big say on how she would manage things. It wasn't Donna controlling everything. It was Donna suggesting stuff, but Wendy deciding what was appropriate, what wasn't. what she would accept and wouldn't accept to deal with this murder. But everything looks like, to all of us outside, to all of us who have done a deep dive into this case, that Wendy would have had to approve of the final choice that was made, the choice of going with the hitman option. That she wouldn't be consulted would be absurd. That she wouldn't have a say on such an important option, right? On all the other options, they were run by Wendy, and Wendy either accepted them or rejected them. And for the most part, she rejected them. And then she was doing her own thing to poke at Dan Markel, right? But so the bottom line is that when it comes to the final decision, the final option, the hitman option, to say that Wendy Adelson didn't have anything to do with it would be to ignore everything. All the options were run by Wendy. And Wendy was the one who decided yay or nay. Right? So to fathom that this family would go with the hitman option and take away the father of those two boys, take away the guy who cares for those children half of the time, while Wendy takes care of the boys for the other half, without getting at least her tacit approval, without giving her the hints that this is what they're going to be doing. So if you're going to object to it, you got to let us know. Right? Of course, if it was all planned by Charlie and or by Donna or both of them, they would not have done it without her approval, express or implied. And if Wendy Adelson approved the hit, approved whatever more violent option that they were thinking about doing, right? Not the ones about manipulating Dan Markel by putting the children in Catholic school or offering him $1 million so that he could travel back and forth and let them move to South Florida, whatever, right? But the actual ultimate hitman option, yeah, they would have gone through her. They would have gotten the approval. Because such an option would have major implications on all of their lives, including Wendy's life, right? Wendy's life would change dramatically once those two boys were fully her responsibility. There was no father anymore there to serve as the backup in case something happened to her. Right? It was going to be all on her. And of course, her parents, her mom, would try to substitute as much as possible, but it's not the same thing. So which family would go with the hitman option and not get an approval from the person that would be most affected by that option? Not this family. They're very tight-knit. They're very close to each other. And as always, every option, it was done through Wendy. So why wouldn't they go through Wendy for the ultimate option that they went with? The hitman option. Makes sense. And you have the joke. And we'll go back to that joke. If everybody's just joking about hiring a hitman, and then it turns out that the murder was done by a hitman, and there's a direct connection between the hitman and the Adelsons, who's going to believe that that was just a joke and that was just a coincidence? Who's going to believe Wendy? Who's going to believe Donna? Who's going to believe Harvey or Charlie that they had nothing to do with hiring a hitman? Nobody. That's the bottom line. Nobody will believe them. There's less evidence against Wendy, But there is that joke. And that joke counts a lot. A lot. It is, perhaps, the most damaging piece of evidence in the case against Wendy. The repeating of that joke so many times, including close to the time of the murder. I mean, a couple of hours or less before the murder, the same morning of the murder. And of course, there's more evidence against Wendy. The hitman joke is, of course, an important piece. Driving by the crime scene, getting rid of the clothes, avoiding that Markel for the 2-3 weeks before the murder, and finally calling him that morning and trying to get his attention that morning. There isn't any evidence after the bump against Wendy. At least nothing of her speaking on the telephone and being recorded. But there is evidence that she was helping the family, that she was helping collect information from the judge for whom she worked, who had a friend in Tallahassee who was a judge and who had inside information about the probable cause affidavit before it had become public. There is more evidence, of course, against Wendy, and I previously discussed much of the evidence against her, including evidence on the day of the murder, not just buying the bullet, or as such, some people think, wearing the owl shirt. Not just that, there's a lot more. Even making that phone call to her parents from the interrogation room next to a victim advocate that could likely overhear the conversation, taking that risk, not knowing that whether your mom was or wasn't involved. You wouldn't take that risk. You wouldn't put your parents in such a precarious situation where they could be caught right there and then if they reacted in a way that exposed their involvement. There is a lot of evidence. Now, whether the state's going to do anything about it or not, whether the case is going to be presented to a grand jury and the grand jury is going to indict, we don't know. It could be indicted as something less than the murder. It could be indicted as something where she wasn't a direct participant, but she allowed it to happen. And so this was a case of aggravated child abuse, in a sense. I would have to look at the statute of limitations issue for that situation. But yeah, definitely some accountability has to happen when it comes to Wendy. And I don't believe that any jury will give her any benefit of the doubt, given the joke. And everything else, of course. But the joke. By making the hitman joke, they associated the TV with a hit, with using a hit to solve the problem. And therefore, this TV is 5 means this problem, the solution for this problem, is going to be 5,000. And it is, of course, related to the hitman option. And of course, we have of course, we have Professor Lacasse. He would be the star witness, Professor Lacasse, saying all the things that Wendy said just before the trial. Just before the murder, about the hitman, about hiring a hitman, about the fact that Charlie tried to hire a hitman. All of those things that show her knowledge and possibly involvement in the hit. But if the state succeeds in obtaining an indictment for murder, there are many theories that they can pursue. That she was helping obtain information, such as when then Markel would leave town, although, of course, Donna may have that information as well. The fact that she might have helped try to set up Jeffrey Lacasse, at least as a possible patsy, not as a serious one, but someone who would distract the police, and maybe even her own actions on the day of the murder, trying to distract the police while the killers got away. All of those things helped, of course, the killers get away and avoid initial attention from the cops to the real perpetrators. Simply no one will give her the benefit of the doubt.
Right before Professor Markel was murdered, right?
The joke was made many times.
It was made right before. Professor Markel was murdered. Yes or no?
Yes.
Now, the joke is very important, not only because it makes them look guilty and because no one will believe that it is a total coincidence that they're telling this hitman joke and that Dan Markel was killed by hitmen, but also because we now understand that in their distorted, sick minds, the hitman joke was going to protect them. It was some kind of an alibi through which they could say that others got the idea to murder Dan Markel and then try to collect from the Adelsons who never wanted the murder done. Just idiotic. But that was their defense. At Charles Adelson's trial, that was their defense, and Donna Adelson adopted it. In a sense, I think so will Wendy. And therefore, she will probably suffer a similar fate, if that's what she's going to go with. But it kind of explains why the whole hitman joke kept coming up.
My brother, the one, his name's Charlie, the one I'm really close to, he makes a lot of jokes in bad taste, and it was a joke he made. He bought the TV for me this morning that got broken, and then I was talking to him about whether it made sense to pay to fix it or whether I should get a new one, and it was always his joke that, like, he knew Danny treated me badly, and it was always his joke. He said, I looked into hiring a hitman, and it was cheaper to get you this TV, so instead I got you this TV. I mean, he would never. He's my big brother, and he's been taking care of me since I was little, but he would never. And I told that to the repair guy this morning.
Right. It's okay.
I said, he asked me how much it cost, and I said I didn't know because it was a gift, because my brother said it was cheaper than a hitman. It was my divorce present.
Okay.
Such a horrible thing to say. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I don't know whether to call him my ex-late spouse or my late ex-spouse, except that late ex-spouse sounds like latex spouse. Last July, someone, and we still don't know who, shot my ex-husband point blank in the back of the head as he pulled into our garage after driving our then 3- and 4-year-old sons to preschool, and thought he would make a wonderful father for my children. It feels sacrilegious these days, even to suggest something less than heroic about my latex husband, because he was murdered. He died violently and young, and likely at the hands of a professional killer.
So to recap, if the state only thinks it can prove that she knew about the murder plot, but was not involved, didn't want it to happen, but just failed to disclose the plot to her ex-husband so that he could prevent it from succeeding, then maybe the best charge would be a creative charge of child abuse. If the state believes that it has enough evidence to show that she was involved in reaching this agreement and picking the hitman option, there was certainly a provable, it has already been proven many times that there was a conspiracy, that the conspiracy resulted in the murder. So that would be probably the easiest charge. Simply, it wouldn't be a huge leap to then establish that Wendy was part of that existing conspiracy. And there is evidence that could be used. There are theories that can be presented to that jury that she had some involvement in the murder plot, even though they don't have to show her actual involvement for the conspiracy charge. And I mean, they don't have to show her involvement in the actual murder. There are things that a jury might think that she actually was involved, which takes us to the most serious charge, which is first-degree murder. The difficulties with that charge are that there's no direct evidence after the bump, except for her helping her family gather information from a judge. And she's not even on that recorded phone call. She's not on any recorded phone calls. So there are no incriminating statements after the bump. And There's no evidence of her paying anybody or of her hiring somebody. There's no statements from any of the co-conspirators about her direct involvement. So it really, as far as we know, of course, we do not know all the evidence. It really will depend on the state proving that she helped, for example, set up distractions to the cops, right? Making herself a distraction on the day of the murder, making Jeffrey LaCasse a possible distraction to the cops, things of that sort that would help the conspiracy succeed. So we'll see what the state does. They may not do anything, or they may charge her with 1, 2, or 3 of these charges, or maybe even all of them. Let's see what happens. Now, regarding the charge of child abuse, that would be a more creative, novel theory. So that's the only reason why is the least likely to be charged. But I think that there is a solid argument to make that she owed a duty to protect those boys from the injury that is caused by the loss of their father through murder.
With the hearing, it is Friday, and I felt an idiot doing this, but I just coded that there was a over on Prescott, and I promise I'm not trying to be dramatic or even nosy. I don't know, just that's what I need, my friend. I hope all is well. I hope the boys are well, and if there's anything you need, let me know. It just ran a chill down my spine when I heard that there was something going on Prescott. All right, so let's do 3083. Hope all is well, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.
Very serious.